everybody, to another edition of the Rock Pile Report podcast. I'm your host, Bill's season ticket holder, Drew Gear. That's my producer, Chris Kruger. And Chris and I are both, once again, dressed similarly. We're both rocking quarter zip sweaters. I'm assuming you didn't get yours at Men's Warehouse?
No, I got this at
Nordstrom Rack.
Close. J. Crew outlet in Niagara Falls. Niagara Falls has an excellent liquor store, supermarket liquors. So you get two birds stoned at once. Hit up J. Crew and then go to supermarket, which is right down the street. Get yourself a store pick.
You know, we're really kind of ruining our credibility over here as the hardest drinking, pettiest Bills podcast when we show up here dressed like asses, for lack of a better term.
I have a ton of quarter zips in my closet.
See, that doesn't shock me, but I'm not supposed to look like you. It's not the Manning cast. Lauren, I love you. Yes. Guys, we are here talking about Bills free agency and the state of the offense and just a lot of what's going on. Hey, I'm Drew Greer with an R. Yes, this is how Drew Greer with an R dresses.
Nice that Thomas is in here. Thomas, I will say, check out the next show that comes out because we did talk about season ticket prices because you did get Thomas had a tweet that got a little bit of traction with his cost. So you'll have to check out the show that comes out probably Friday morning.
Yep. And Thomas, for those of you listening to this now, Thomas is formerly of Cover One, is branching out to doing his own stuff.
Buffalo Media Network.
Make sure you give him a follow on social media. Thomas, we want to throw that in the chat there. I appreciate everybody showing up tonight as we it's Combine Week. It's the worst week ever. Right? For me, it's a personal crisis. I hate this thing. The hand size conversation used to take me out. That used to be the worst part of it for me. Mr. Rogers will be the guest on the next show. Damn it, Steve. I like how the chat immediately just becomes our viewers don't actually like us. And that's what I like. It makes it good, all right? Like you get a good back and forth going.
Yeah. I don't have any good sweaters though, so I can't.
I'll sweater vest you to death. That's it. We're coming in here dressed like Cosby.
Yeah, we're going to be dressed like Step Brothers.
I'm going to give you guys my best Cosby minus the roofies for next show. So with that said, it's Combine Week, and I detest this thing. I think it's a big dog and pony show that most of what's important doesn't actually get the traction it should from fans. And at the same time, you've got coaches who are out there talking themselves into bad decisions as we speak. I'm looking at you, Raiders. I'm looking at you, Raiders. L. Davis's ghost will run up to the podium and draft another Darius Hayward Bay. Like, this is the time of the year where everybody feels like, hey, I can't wait to see what these players do. And it conflates the value of certain players in fans' minds, devalues other players, and at the same time can do the same thing for no reason inside NFL front offices. You go to meetings and you hear about how Kyrie Elam won everybody over with his notebook. It's like, I don't need that. I don't need that in my life. It's a terrible week. But what I do love is that is the legal tampering period. Like, not the legal one, it's the legal tampering period. In fact, Indy has become the tampering capital of the entire world this week as we head into NFL free agency. And I think it's really hilarious if you picture Indianapolis, kind of this unassuming Midwestern city. It's a major city, but it also doesn't have a ton going on most of the time, especially not this year. And then the entire NFL descends upon this city for an entire week. And it's packed with all of these white-collar NFL front office types. And you think about what that is. Like, in the minds of fans, they probably think about these negotiations or these back alley conversations taking place between NFL GMs and agents and other GMs as like, it's kind of to Lauren's point. You think about it taking place like in like a back alley or in the behind St. Elmo's. Guys are going out in the alleyway and having a conversation, or they find some shady, dimly lit conference room to have like a hush-hush talk about, hey, what do you want from player XYZ? Instead, what it is that it's two guys dressed like everybody's uncle at Thanksgiving, right down to the woven belt and the New Balances, just sitting around having beers and going, oh, hey, yeah, that Miles guy. Yeah, are you interested? And Andrew Berry goes, nah, as he's kind of throwing in a mouthful of corn chips. And he goes, nah, not interested. And everyone goes, come on. It's like I'm trying to negotiate Chris into playing the song I want as we intro the podcast. Like those are the conversations that are actually taking place. I love it. Trades, it's just the same two Manning-esque uncles who bump into each other at a bar and talk a little shop over cocktails. It's fascinating to me, the reality of this whole event versus what we think as outsiders goes on. You know, when I get a chance to talk to guys like Tyler Dunn, who go there and kind of are in the middle of all that, or Brett and EJ, who get to watch from bootleg football, who get to watch it all going down. That, to me, is the value of the Combine, is to provide the landscape so that agents, GMs, they can all get together and just talk shop, where there's tampering going on left and right, but there's nothing anyone can do about it. And in that way, a lot of business gets done. Take a look at every single NFL outlet's Twitter handle this week. It will be exploding with news. Monday rolled around and all of a sudden the talk was Jonathan Allen, standout defensive lineman Jonathan Allen, is all of a sudden on the trade block. And you go, whoa, all right, that's new. Oh, hey, Harold Landry's been given permission to seek a trade. Where did that come from? I'll tell you where. Because his agent's there at the Combine. And his agent got with the GM of the Titans, and they were like, all right, can we make a deal? Is there something to be had? Because everybody knows they have to get out in front of free agency if there's a trade coming. So in the next few days, you're going to watch the trade market get so much broader. You know, a couple weeks ago, we sat here and talked about guys who might make sense for the Bills to trade for. And we talked about the Crosby rumors and Garrett and Trey Hendrickson and all these names because they were the low-hanging fruit. Now what you're going to start hearing and seeing are the names of players who are actually probably more reasonably attainable. And I think that that's the value of this entire weekend. Remember when Steve Noble, remember when the Raiders thought they outsmarted everyone and picked Alex Leatherwood, number 17? Exactly. Combine. The NFL Combine is to blame for this. So over the next week, we all need to be prepared for kind of an onslaught and an outpouring of just news, quote unquote. And hey, it's rumored that this team's going to make this player available via trade if there's anyone interested. That's a direct result of a conversation between that player's agent and that GM behind closed doors at the Combine. I love it. What I also love is that it starts kind of my favorite part of this off-season cycle, which is fake Twitter account season. Everyone in this chat, everybody listening, everybody watching at home knows for a fact that you've been had. You've gotten got. Some dork opened up a fake Twitter account with like Ian Rappaport spelled like Michael Rappaport, the comedian, instead of Ian Rappaport from NFL Network. And then tweeted out that insert player X just, it's announced that he's going to be traded to wherever. And everyone geeks out about it. And then you all look dumb to your friends and family and other people on the internet when you find out it's not true. And I love it. I love
the latest
everything
one
about it.
Gronk to the Broncos. Gronkowski's coming out of retirement to play for Sean Payton. I find that to be a lie.
Well, here's what I love. There's a quagmire that gets created because you've got AI bots that are just being used to drive engagement so they can eventually try to sell you something off Temu. Dorks who just want hey, I'm going to do something that I think is funny. Haha, this is a joke. And then you've got guys who are just out here saying things to try to drum up social media attention for themselves. And they all end up in the same fishbowl. And it's all crap. It's like you're swimming inside of a landfill. And I love it. Now, Chris, if you can think back, what was your favorite fake news, Twitter or Facebook moment that you can recall in terms of trades or free agency signings? Like, what was one of those fake things that you loved when you saw it or that you fell for?
I don't remember. I have fallen for that. I think once. Mark Schofield told me to log out for the night.
That's it.
I don't have. There isn't one that comes to mind for me. They usually just like enter one ear, out the other, and I forget about it.
The Antonio Brown trade from the Steelers to the Bills.
Ah, yes.
That got tweeted about, and then they literally came and like NFL Network was tweeting about it. And then Antonio Brown's there 5 minutes later going, Cap, this is a lie. This is a damn lie.
Bill Cowher at Duff's.
Bill Cowher at Duff's to be the head coach of the Bills was another good one. I'm going to say this, and I know people are going to get mad at me, but I don't care. It was one of the funniest things. I can remember that a certain blog network and podcast group broke that the Bills were going to be signing wide receiver Jeremy Maclin in free agency, and that it was a done deal. I know they're going to get mad at me for talking about it, and I'm rehashing the past. I love Rico. Rico is one of those people who, Chris, we started when we were podcasting. We came up with those guys.
Yes.
Shit happens. Sometimes you get caught up in a race to be first about things, and it bites you in the ass, and there's nothing you can do about that. It was funny. Like, we still joke about hashtag sources. It's like an inside joke, but it's not trying to be mean to the guys over there. It's just, that's a hilarious thing that happened. How about the fact that actual professionals get caught up in this, right? Nothing's funnier. ESPN's Jeremy Fowler once retweeted a fake Adam Schefter account about a signing that was going to happen, that Steelers linebacker Patrick Queen was going to sign with the Seahawks when he left the Ravens. And the funniest part about this all is that based on the timestamps, he was literally sitting in the ESPN green room about to go on live TV with Adam Schefter. You'd think he could just look across the room and go, hey, Adam, is that real? No, just jumped on Twitter and retweeted it and then went on air and proceeded to talk about it. And you could see Schefter's face being like, what? Said what now? And then they just cut to a commercial shortly thereafter. It was so bad. Like Marcus Spears got caught up in it. Like, it's hilarious. Oliver, I'd rather be accurate and reliable than a rush to be first. I don't even care about accurate and reliable. I just want to have fun. I'm here for the lulls. At this point, I'm here for the cheap laughs, whiskey in a glass. That's it. That's why I'm here.
Are they accurate and reliable in England?
I don't know. People hate journos over there. Some kid made up a story. Again, some kid just made up a fake Twitter handle, tweeted out that the Chargers were trading picks with the Giants like a month before the draft. You don't make a trade up in the first round unless it's for a player, right?
Yeah.
He tweeted it out, and Warren Sharp and Pro Football Focus both like got duped into believing it and had full blown like dissertations on it. But I think, Chris, if you want to get this one queued up for the people watching on TV, and there's a drop that goes along with it, Deion Dawkins might have actually gotten everybody the best. The Buffalo Bills left tackle Deion Dawkins, it was him. He decided to troll everybody. Here's the tweet he put out just 2 days before the start of free agency last season. Now, for those of you, Chris, once you get it on screen, I want to read it for everybody. It's basically, hey, it's been real, Buffalo. You know, and in fact, Chris, you want to read it? You do a better narration, apparently.
Okay. It was good while it lasted, Buffalo. Excited for this next chapter of my football career. Wonder if it's okay to eat ranch now.
Hit that drop.
Which one?
Mass hysteria. You know.
I gotta have to search for it.
Of course you will.
This is the thing that we don't
did talk
about.
about it pre-show, and you just didn't cue it up. But that's fine.
Or I have notes so I know where it is.
So here's what happens. 30 minutes later, after he tweets this out, it's chaos. It's fire and brimstone on social media. People are lamenting. They're crying. They're dragging the name of Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane. They're talking about how could they let this happen. And then he doesn't even announce it. The Buffalo Bills Twitter handle and NFL Network simultaneously announced that he signed a multi-year extension to stay with the team. And then he's like, I just had to fuck with you guys a little bit, it's objectively hilarious. But what I like about it is that he's taking advantage of all of our appetite for every single thing that's out there and how emotionally tied we are to a lot of that and knee-jerk reactionary we are as fans. So he decided to have a little fun at all of our expense. So when these days roll around here over the next 2 weeks ahead of free agency, what you have to keep in mind is just like the great Rick Astley once said, you know the rules and so do I. If you get got, you fall for it, you respond, or you retweet. Got to log off for the day. Shut Twitter off, go home, soak your head, and then you just figure it out in the morning when you wake up, right? It's not okay. It's not the worst thing in the world. It's not okay, but it's not the worst thing in the world that could happen to a person. What I think is funnier than fake signings, who's your favorite signing that never happened?
I mean, I think of that, the signing that happened, but nothing ever materialized would be Kevin Cobb.
Kevin Cobb, how about
slipping on the mat?
I'm thinking about Dry Archer. I'm thinking about Anquan Bolden. Guys, in the chat, who's your favorite player who was supposed to be a Buffalo Bill, like quote unquote, like, oh, it's happening, and then it didn't happen?
Anquan Bolden, he was just here for what? Like, he didn't even make it to a preseason game, did he?
No.
It was just training camp.
I'll do you one better. Throwback, Tom Cousineau. We drafted him in the first round, and he never showed up. He literally abandoned us to the CFL. He was like, nah, fuck Buffalo.
But that worked out in the end via trade.
Sure. But also, he gets drafted first overall by the Buffalo Bills, and he never played. He decides, I'd rather be an Alouette. Said no one ever. Guys, in the chat, your favorite player who was supposed to be and never was in a Buffalo Bills uniform.
Vontae Davis.
Yes. So with that, I want to talk about the offensive landscape and just all of the dynamics that are going on with this team ahead of free agency. I feel like every single podcast out there is going to come on and they're going to tell you guys all about these are the players and how about this and this and the other thing. I like to ease into these things like an old man getting into the tub. And so with that, I want to talk first about our team, right? Because if you look at the makeup of the Buffalo Bills right now ahead of free agency, we're a team that doesn't have a lot of heavy lifting to do on the offensive side of the football. We just don't. There's multiple positions that are out there that we're already set at. Tight end. We already have a highly paid Dawson Knox, and we've got this growing kind of, we're hoping can take the next step talent in Dalton Kincaid. If you throw in, Chris, pull up our lads. I just want to verify. Who's our third tight end right now? Because I know we have
Tommy Sweeney.
Tommy Sweeney. I remember that guy's a 7th round draft pick, and it was just the funniest. So tight ends, Quentin Morris was tight end 3 this year, and he's a free agent. But if they want to retain him, they can, and if not, they're going to have third tight end options. I mean, if you look at it. We used an offensive lineman as a 6th blocker on the line, more so than a tight end more often than not. So the fact that we have Kincaid and Knox, there's really not much else we need to do with the position. Fullback, I don't even think we need one. People keep trying to tell me why Reggie Gilliam matters. Oh no, he's a good story. It's this, it's that,
I'll tell you why he matters. Partnership with Reed Ferguson to bring Raising Cane's and or Zaxby's to Buffalo.
I like that Thomas DeLause came up with Lee Smith and Scott Chandler. Lee Smith was the best, one of the best tight ends we had when the team stunk.
He's a great blocker.
Or at least was mediocre. Great blocker. I don't think that there's a lot of needs for Buffalo. And I feel like that's where I and a lot of Bills fans differ, because the people you talk to, they want the Bills to be active in free agency, but they're scattershot. You know, when you talk to the average fan and when you're at work or when you're standing around at the gas pump and somebody's just, Chris, does that happen to you? No, it doesn't, because you don't talk to people in public.
What, at the gas pump?
Sure.
No, never.
So when you're talking to other people about the Buffalo Bills, everybody wants action. And I almost feel like they don't know what that means, or at least they don't have a focus for it. They just know they want something, and that's fine. That's a lay fan reaction. I just want change because we didn't make the Super Bowl and we were so close. I want change. Not all change is good. You should remember that. But realistically, the offensive side of the ball is not where you're going to see a ton of it. The Bills are pretty much set. And I think that that's why this free agency period is so interesting, because I think that more so than looking outwards, the Bills should be looking inwards at their own roster. Because what they have right now at their hands is the future of the core of this team. They have it here. I'm already waiting, Chris, for free agency to start and to see a whole bunch of angsty tweets and memes of that guy like poking the Bills logo. Yeah, hey, come on, do something. I'm expecting to see a lot of that.
That one.
Yes, that one. I'm expecting to see that on the day that free agency kicks off. And I'll tell you why. You have to look inward before you can look outward for the Buffalo Bills. Despite not having a ton of high-end talent, or at least household names as pass catchers, 2024 was a dominant season for the Bills offense. Joe Brady found a way to weaponize pretty much every single stitch of offensive talent he could put together. And he had to dig deep to do it. I mean, we almost broke the record for the most single individual players to score a touchdown in a season. Ty Johnson was a key piece of a bunch of games. That never would have happened. Ty Johnson would not have had the receiving games that he did for the Buffalo Bills if Stephon Diggs was still here or Amari Cooper was in his prime. Obviously, you like seeing the creativity and the execution and the fact that your offense can score points. But I got to say, it was nice having an easy button, right? Like Stephon Diggs. You know, for those of you watching right now, would you have preferred, like, do you think having Stephon Diggs on last year's offense would have been a benefit or a detriment? Spin comes in right off the top. Darius Slayton's the number one target for me. This is the kind of thinking, right? I like this because what I've heard a lot of is, well, we need a guy. We need the alpha. We need to bring back, first of all, I've heard bring back Amari Cooper. Kill that idea. I just don't like it. Not for his age. You're paying for a name and previous accomplishments, not what can you do for me today. I'm thinking about Mac Hollins. Mac Hollins is kind of the epitome of this, right? You want to embrace the everybody eats mentality. You want that. But you do need to maybe add a little bit more explosion and execution if you want to get more consistent wins and at least maintain your level of consistency on offense. But at the same time, you've got these people who like think it's Chris. Oh no, it's all about skill positions. Let's go get a wide receiver. Let's go do this. Let's go do that. How about this? You want to talk about priorities right now? I say you take a look at your own offensive line and figure out who you want to hang on to. Am I crazy for saying that I would rather watch money spent on our current offensive line than a new wide receiver from outside the program?
It's not crazy at all. I'd sign up for that.
It's not nuts if you've been watching that the Bills' offensive line went from being something that they win in spite of in the early 2000s, 2020s, to something that they can now lean on as a major strength of the team. I've got one stat, like a one-stat recap for this. In 2022, the Bills allowed 33 sacks. Prior to that, it was 26 and 38 in the two previous seasons. In 2024, the Bills went 4 consecutive games without allowing a sack, and they only gave up 14 over 21 games. The first time during Allen's career, he'd gone down less than 20 times. Because our offensive line not only did a great job run blocking, but carried the load in terms of pass protection in a way that they hadn't before. So while you can tell me that it's of paramount importance that we go get a deep threat, or we get speed and stretch the field and we do all these things, and everybody wants to turn an eye to free agency to do that. Last season, the Bills shored up their offensive tackle positions, inked them both to long-term deals that keep them here for the foreseeable future. Now they've got a little bit of work to do on the interior of the offensive line because Connor McGovern, who was a second-team Pro Bowl, he played because he was a replacement, and David Edwards at left guard are both going to be unrestricted free agents at the end of this coming season. If Connor McGovern goes out there and has another Pro Bowl year, you're going to shell out a lot more money for the last couple years of his career than you would. I think he's only 27 or 28. you're going to pay a lot more for him then than you would now if you just get it done. Also, you don't want to have this thing of what if hanging over your franchise. What if we don't have good center play in front of our generational quarterback? You just played Mitch Morrison to almost the age of 34 before you decided that, hey, I have to move on. I have to move on. I have to get younger, more athletic, more powerful. I also like the fact that Alec Anderson, you've got him here. Meaningful snaps as a sixth defensive lineman, great backup interior offensive line player. Ryan Vandermark started for Spencer Brown against the Chiefs this year. He can also play left tackle for you in a pinch. He's an amazing swing tackle. The Lone Granger is a developmental center. We don't know if he's going to work out or not, but his pedigree coming out of Georgia is pretty solid. This offensive line right now has great talent, also depth behind it. You have to maintain that. And I would rather watch the team than seeing them go out and spend a bunch of money to try to pay. Let's bring in a wide receiver that's going to, quote unquote, fix the deep passing game. No. Retain your offensive line. And in fact, in some cases, by extending these guys, like if you gave David Edwards a contract extension, I believe you have some money you can move around on his contract if you do that. Connor McGovern's another player where, I don't know, if you think he's good enough to be center, then you retain him and you move forward and you continue to groom the Lone Granger until he's in a position where he can firmly take that job. Doesn't seem like they're ready to give it to him yet. I wouldn't either. Considering the impact of the offensive line, I would absolutely say that McGovern's the more important player. He grew this year from one of the worst centers in the NFL to start the season into one of the league's most consistent when the season ended, which is, I think, the natural learning curve of a position change like that. You go from left guard to center, which you've never played professionally. You played it in college.
Aaron Cromer.
You have good coaching. You've got the right guy with the right skill set, with the right coach. He can become a high-end center for you. And he did. So with the chemistry as with Allen, an extension just makes sense. You just got to get those void years figured out that you've already baked into his contract. David Edwards really shined as a reliable left guard option. $4.9 million against this year's cap. But if you want to take swings elsewhere, 27 years old, Edwards, you give him a 2-year bridge deal. I bet you he takes it. Because I don't know where else he's going to just slide in as a starter. You could go out there, give him an extension, maybe a slight pay bump, and you could smooth his cap hits out, push him on out into the future, and actually be more active this year and next. Well, knowing you still have a guy who, regardless of what his pedigree before he joined the Buffalo Bills was, when you put him in as a starter, he was a reliable piece of what was one of the better offensive lines in football. I think that's just two of the conversations the Bills brass is going to be having over the next few weeks. Because you can't keep drafting guys in the trenches. We got very, very lucky. Torrance fell to us in the draft. And he's been good as a right tackle. Not a star, but good.
I mean guard.
Oh, yeah, as a guard.
We do have to reference that if you were I would think probably listening back then, I had mocked in my only mock draft. I had Torrance to the Bills in the first round. I was just a round off. I got it right, just a round off.
Yep. So Torrance, good player, not great yet. But you can retain good offensive linemen and continue to make that the backbone of your team for the next 2 to 3 seasons without having any major questions as to who's left, who's shuffling, who's leaving, who do we have to draft to replace. You don't have to. Lauren in the comments saying pay the O-line, draft DNs. I don't hate that idea. I don't hate that concept. There's, next week we're going to have Anthony Prohaska in studio with us, and we're going to talk about... Allegedly. And we're going to talk about some of these concepts and some of the ways that you can get better on the D-line. And I think that there's some very intriguing players where the Bills are. The defensive ends and defensive tackles in this draft are really interesting. So depending on what you can accomplish on the trade market and in free agency, you can maybe draft some of those guys. But I think on offense... all of this talk about going and getting some kind of deep threat or alpha wide receiver, it's all overblown because you're not going to do it. And I'll tell you why. Because if you look at the state of the skill positions, like if T. Higgins was going to hit the market, which he's not, he's going to get franchise tagged and he's going to be forced to stay for another year in Cincinnati, whether he likes it or not. He'd be the best player available. Outside of him, the rest of the market is like, I'm trying to think of a word for this, Chris. Thesaurus.com. Can you find me like I'm thinking about lame, weak, impotent, less than ideal. Thesaurus, look up weak. What are some other buzzwords I could use here?
Debilitated,
softened, languid. Ooh, I like that one.
Unsubstantial.
Unsubstantial. I like this. Incapacitated. No, but that's what I will be by the end of this podcast. Incapacitated. When you take a look at who's available out there on the market, it's almost embarrassing.
Mid. How did we miss that one?
Mid. Painfully mid. I took a look. Out of 66 unrestricted free agent wide receivers that are on the market right now, 22 of them, which is 1/3 of the entire market, is over 30 years old. That's 1/3, which feels really, really old for a free agency class. And worse, there's just a handful of categories. The biggest names fall into this old group, right? Like there's a couple different buckets you can put these players in. There's the old guys who used to be good. And you talk about your Stephon Diggs, your Keenan Allen, a couple of the biggest names are falling into that category. I also learned through this research, Chris, did you know that Juju Smith-Schuster,
Chiefs?
Do you know, he's played for Pittsburgh, Kansas City, New England, and then back to Kansas City. He's somehow 2 years younger than Zay Jones. Former Buffalo Bills, Zay Jones.
Yeah, when you say Juju Smith-Schuster, I just, my brain immediately goes to that guy is on the tail end of his career.
I like Ralph Wilson Sr., old equals cheap, unless you're talking about Stephon Diggs or Keenan Allen. These guys are still going to command contracts, which is crazy, and you'd be an idiot to do it.
And Diggs has ACL, coming off the ACL.
So with that in mind, though, you have this old but used to be good bucket. Then you've got this old but has never been literally anything bucket. And I'm talking about the Gunnar Olszewskis of the world, the Zay Joneses. Chris, go to Spotrac and just pull up 2025 free agent tracker.
I was going to say that, when you're naming old but somehow are still in the league, that's like a Chase Daniel. How long he lasted in the league.
It's really funny when you take a look at the age that's floating around out there. And then you go, wait a minute. There's old guys like Tim Patrick. You're like, oh, wait a minute. Yeah, he used to be a thing.
You want wide receivers?
Yeah. Zach Pascal is out there. Kaderil Hodge. I don't even know who the fuck that is.
Bob Woods. You want to bring back
Bob Woods is out there, people. You can get yourself a Bob Woods. You're going to pay more for an older player who hasn't done anything in a while, a Tyler Boyd, a River Craycraft, who Elf Arteaga comes on the AFC's Roundup show and tells me he's good, and yet I still don't know who the hell he is. And then you've got this other bucket out there, the draft redo bucket. I say that because it's a segment of young players. And this free agency class is overflowing with guys who got talked up during the draft process, who jumped up boards probably because of the combine, and then got drafted highly only to go on and do all of nothing to warrant a contract extension. I mean, look at these names. Diami Brown out of Washington, a 3rd-round pick, but everyone thought Diami Brown was going to be something worthwhile pre-draft. Tutu Atwell. The Rams drafted him in the 2nd round out of Louisville. He's done fuck all but be a fast wide receiver. Rondale Moore, 2nd round pick out of Purdue. played for the Cardinals, then got, I think, traded to the Falcons. Terrence Marshall, Raiders, second-round pick out of LSU. Big, long, 50-50 ball guy. Chris, sound familiar?
Sure.
Guy drafted highly in the second round, 50-50 ball player. Everyone just assumed he'd grow into the NFL.
You're talking about James Hardy.
Yes, James Hardy. Now Terrence Marshall's back out there in the market. Dwayne Eskridge, drafted by the Seahawks, sent to the Dolphins for nothing. Former second-round pick out of Western Michigan. There's a slew of young swings and misses in the draft that could be had for a song. And I guarantee you there's a couple GMs out there who loved these guys in the run-up to the draft who will say, hey, that's a guy. If I could just get my hands on that guy, I can be the one who molds him. My coach can be the one who molds him. It's going to be great. It's like the guy who just simps around a girl who's dating somebody else, biding their time for them to break up at the bowling alley and then you can get her into your pickup truck. Or was that just North Collins dating?
Right. One of my good friends in Atlanta, his mom and dad met at a bowling alley.
Poor bastard. Oh my God. That's not the story you tell your children.
Hey, Barron was an excellent bowler. He could bowl 240.
Now,
Easy.
Chris, I asked you to get some audio from a YouTube video about Leon from the Budweiser commercials.
Yeah, got it.
This class is not interesting or compelling. And out of all the guys who might make an impact out of the gate are aged, right? Either have an injury history or they're just an idiot like Deontay Johnson. Don't do that. You don't bring in Deontay Johnson unless your marketing team can nickname him Leon and shoot ironic remakes of those 90 Budweiser commercials about a diva wide receiver. Chris?
Leon, your reactions following today's devastating loss.
Football's a team sport, man. So I got to put the loss squarely on the shoulders of my supporting cast. Look, man, I've been carrying these guys the whole season, but I can't do it all. I need some help.
So your 4 fumbles weren't a factor in your mind?
Not if one of those other guys would have jumped on the ball. Again, Leon can't do everything.
Lion team.
Well, ain't no we either.
That's Deontay Johnson. You want that guy in your locker room as a free agent, God bless you. You as a franchise deserve whatever happens to you. So with that in mind, there's some other ideas I think the Buffalo Bills should look at with their money. And again, it's focused on looking inward instead of outward. First one's Mac Hollins, and I feel like this is a no-brainer. He really puts the Bills in a bind because he came in off the street. And I guess if I say he puts them in a bind, it's a good one to have. Because this was a street free agent that could have contributed nothing. Mac Hollins could have come here and been nothing but a punt gunner. And he would have earned his paycheck last year. Like if you were a standout special teams player, made a couple good plays, a couple good, special teams plays, maybe coverage unit plays, maybe return game blocks. People would have said that you earned your paycheck. He not only shows up and gets weird, but it's weird in a lovable way. Not like a Sammy Watkins, I think I'm a space lizard kind of a weird. And then leads the team in receiving touchdowns. And oh, by the way, is a special teams ace. And oh, by the way, embraces the dirty work that really competitive football takes. He's out there pulling guys' hair, setting what are basically offensive picks. And just any time that you needed a spark, you could look at Mac Hollins and his attitude would allow him to make a play that would get everybody fired up. To see him show up and show out like he did in 2024, and then just unceremoniously leave town? Chris, would you be disappointed? Even though you have limited emotional skin in the game when it comes to this football team, would you be disappointed to see Mac Hollins leave after the year he just had?
Yes, I'd want him back.
He's 31. It's going to limit his market value. And I feel like Buffalo could have him on a 1 to 2 year contract, probably around $3 million a year. And that's something that you have to entertain if you're the Buffalo Bills. Like, would you be content with paying Mac Hollins a similar salary, even if his touchdowns decrease? If you said, hey, 2 years, $6.5 million.
Sign me up.
Okay. Like 5 for a guy of his caliber is probably unsustainable, but it doesn't matter. because everything else he brings to the game is what makes him valuable. His veteran savvy that allows your wide receiver 3 or 4 to also be an impact player in multiple phases of the game, whether it's run blocking, punt coverage, kick return coverage, whether it's receiving. I mean, that Colts game, Chris, he basically put us in the driver's seat to get a pull away from the Colts. Yeah. Making some ridiculous catches down the stretch. I think it's probably unreasonable that any of the younger players out there in the free agent market can come in and do what Mac Hollins did for the Buffalo Bills last year.
I will go with a Mac Hollins to re-sign, because you're not going to – we just went through the whole market of receivers. Now there's nothing there. So obviously you're going to spend a third what do we have? We don't have any thirds. We have 2 seconds, 2 fourths, 3 sixths. So barring – where we're going to move with some of those picks, that 3 to 6 round range, you're going to take a rookie, and I'd like to have just a smidge of veteran leadership in that wide receiver room for rookies. And I don't trust Curtis Samuel with that role. I will trust Mac Hollins with that role.
Steve Noble makes a good point. Mac Hollins is the second coming of Lorenzo Alexander. I just need a guy who's aged but performs better than his pedigree. That's it. A guy who's a legitimate gamer. I just love the game of football. I'm going to show up, and this is how I'm going to play it. I'm going to play it hard-nosed, intense, and the young guys around you will watch and feed off this. Spin in the comments. Hollins' role, age isn't a problem for what he does. And I love that. That's why you can trust that giving him a 2-year deal isn't going to blow up in your face. He's not going to become dead weight overnight, because what he does is not, hey, I'm going to go win with route running savvy, or hey, I need high end speed. He's not Emmanuel Sanders, where the second he picks up a slight injury, he all of a sudden becomes less effective, because there's so many things to his role that he does that makes him a great player to retain. And I think that's a thing that they have to have in the back of their heads. And then, Chris, I'll read you my notes verbatim for what I had here for Khalil Shakir. Now, I wrote this on Monday. Wrote this Monday night as I'm sitting on my couch. I said, this one's much more of a no-brainer. Shakir's the Bills' most consistent pass catcher. They need him, and he needs a quarterback who can trust him to make some of the crazy-ass catches Josh gives him chances on. I don't think we need a deep dive on why he's important to the team, and they should similarly look to extend his contract while leaving themselves flexibility in the early years of it. Thanks for stealing my fucking thunder, Bean. You had to roll in here and ruin what I wanted to. I was like, hey, I've got a really salient point to make about Khalil Shakir. And then Tuesday, they're like, we paid him. Paid him. Fuck you, Drew Greer, with your stupid quarter zip sweater.
Was it 32 guaranteed at signing?
His contract structure is a thing of beauty. And it's an immediate win, especially when you look at the landscape of who's being paid what at the wide receiver position. I mean, if you look at just in terms of total cash and you want to look at wide receivers, 4-year, $60 million contract, $32 million guaranteed, average annual salary of $15. He'll earn a base salary of $32 while carrying a cap hit of $32 million.
Yeah, in his first year.
So they must be doing something. There's some crazy shit about to happen. I think that's just Spotrac fucking everybody up. I think Spotrac will eventually make that more reasonable. But when you think about it on just salary rankings and total cash, and you look at who's getting paid what, on its face, that puts Khalil Shakir at number 2 in the NFL ahead of Justin Jefferson. But that's not correct, because once Spotrac smooths it out, you're going to see that guys like Kelvin Ridley are making more money than Khalil Shakir. Guys like Terry McLaurin are going to be making more average money than Khalil Shakir. And you go, okay, that makes sense, maybe. And then you go on down the list and you go, okay, at 15 per, Amon-Ra St. Brown. Yeah, sure, he deserves to be making more money than Khalil Shakir. And then you get to this one, Jalen Waddle. Jalen Waddle is going to make more money than Khalil Shakir. And I tweeted out something about this. You can find it, and I'll retweet it for everybody just so they can see it over at Rockpile Report on Twitter. There was a Dolphins fan who did an apples-to-apples comparison between the targets, catches, and impact plays made by Jalen Waddle and Khalil Shakir over the last 2 seasons. Where he landed was that the Bills just fleeced the entire market with this contract because you got a guy who makes quietly just as many impact in between the 20s plays as Jalen Waddle does, but you're paying less for his services and less guaranteed money overall. And that's a victory for Brandon Beane. It's a massive win. He's already the most reliable. Yeah, this is the guy right here. Hugert Michael. 2024, Jalen Waddle signs a 3-year, $84.7 million contract. 2025, Khalil signs 4 years, $60 million. Is Jalen Waddle better, quote unquote? Yes. Is he one less year and $24.5 million more expensive better? Absolutely not. It's amazing to see that we have a GM who can evaluate talent, make a fair offer to a player who wants to be here. I think that can't be undersold. They found a guy who wanted to be here so badly he took what looks like on his face a hometown discount. When you think about the fact that he's already been one of the most reliable receivers on the team for the last 2 seasons, like ever since we got rid of Cole Beasley, he's the best talent we have in that sort of role.
Yeah, he fit into that role well. He's probably better than Beasley.
He finished 3rd in the NFL, not just in wide receivers, but 3rd in the entire NFL in yards after contact. 3rd. It was Jamar Chase, Devon Achane, and Khalil Shakir. And he does all of this with no drama. There's no, at least that I know of, there's no baby mama drama. There's none of this Tyreek Hill nonsense. There's no Deontay Johnson nonsense of him not wanting to go on the field when the team's down. He just makes savvy football plays, breaks contact and gets upfield, and then puts on charity events for adoptable pets. He's a Buffalo Bill through and through. The fact that they kept him in the way that they went about it is perfect. And so when I look at the rest of the wide receiver depth chart, I go, if you bring back Hollins, you do what you should do, and you bring back Hollins, you bring back Shakir, I don't really care what else is out there on the market. The market stinks. I don't like it. I don't like what's on the market. Like if I had to throw darts, Spin in the comments mentioned that there's a Darius Slayton out there. I would say that if I can't get a Darius Slayton, I also like the idea of a Demarcus Robinson because he's a very good route runner. He gets down the field. He finished reasonably well in terms of explosive plays, but there's much smarter people out there than me. You know, Cover One at 9:00 is going to be doing their free agency preview, and they're going to tell you all the X's and O's about every guy who's on the free agent market. I don't give a shit about that. I want one more wide receiver who can make our core just a little bit more explosive, who can work that deep area of the field, kind of like a John Brown when we had him in 2020. Give me that level of player. Now, John Brown, Chris, can you look up what he cost when we signed him? Because I remember it being a pretty reasonable contract. It was like, what, 20, not even 20, it was like 10 million. Well, he looks that up. I want to pivot to running backs. When I take a look at the market, I hate this one too. It looks a lot like the wide receiver group in terms of
3 years, 27.
Okay, so 3 years, $27 million for John Brown, who went on to be our best wide receiver in 2020 or 2019. And then in 2020, when we grabbed Stephon Diggs, they were a great 1-2-3 punch between those 3 receivers. You can go out there and find a talent like John Brown. John Brown dropped more passes than any wide receiver. You're not wrong, but he was still, like, right now with this Buffalo Bills team, all I need is a John Brown. And he'd probably take a discount knowing what the team is and what what our trajectory is as a franchise. You might even be able to get a guy like that to take a small discount to come join the squad just for the chance to touch a Lombardi trophy. Now, when I talk about running backs, this is what also pisses me off. I've heard a lot of this over the last few weeks. Well, first of all, let me talk about the market before I get carried away here. It's a lot like the wide receivers. I see a bunch of names that used to be good ideas that every Bills fan was like, oh, I wish we had that guy. It's broken up into like guys who draft Twitter was creaming over, like Travion Williams, who has been buried on Cincy's depth chart forever. Literally, he was supposed to be the Khalil Shakir of running backs, late round pick that blows up. I also see the names that fantasy football pundits keep telling me are going to be good. You know, every single Raiders running back, if you got suckered into drafting last year, any Raiders running back, you feel like an asshat. You hate the fact that an Alexander Madison or an Amir Abdullah were guys that you thought were going to be game changers, and instead they just were an albatross on your bench for fantasy football. And they gave the Raiders nothing of substance. Nick Chubb. It's sad to see what has happened with his career. Like, it's legitimately sad. Still super productive, but injuries have robbed him of time and play to earn a paycheck. And now he's just a very injured running back who's going to be hitting the market with a lot of wear and tear. Javonte Williams, never recovered from tearing his ACL. And he's out there. He was painted as the next big thing out of that running back class the year he was drafted. And now he's out there, and you can probably have him for a song in free agency. There aren't any answers at the position. There's nothing high end you can trust. It's not like this last running back cycle where you watch running backs get paid. Saquon Barkley, Swift got paid. There was a number of guys.
We have one that wants to get paid.
Well, and that's it. I guess my question is, where else are you going? Where else are you going to spend your money? I'll reiterate one of my boozier points from last week's show. If you really think that the Buffalo Bills can and should load up and go chasing some wild trade for an uber-talented defensive player, I need a game wrecker. I need a Myles Garrett, a Max Crosby, a Jonathan Allen. I got to go out here and I got to get a guy who's going to hit a home run for my team on defense. You're going to pay draft capital to do it. And the same people who come to me and go, well, that's what the Bills should be doing with it. Stop talking about letting Cook walk. It's crazy because you can't do both. You can't trade for a supremely talented defensive player and then also say, well, I'll just go draft another running back. It's not a one-for-one trade. Everyone goes, oh, well, the line's so good, they can just make a 1,000-yard rusher. I looked it up, Chris. Do you know how many 800-yard or more rushers as a rookie there's been in NFL history?
No idea.
14. So in the decades of NFL football, there's been 14 rookies who hit 800 yards or more. Now, knowing where the Buffalo Bills have their draft capital at the back end of every round, is it reasonable to assume that they can go into the draft and just find a guy that you can plug and play who will be what James Cook is right now? I think it's a fallacy that fans talk themselves into. Here's the reality. Don't worry about the cap. It's not your money. It's Terry Pagula's. What the hell do I care about how they choose to spend it? I know that they have to spend draft picks and they have to spend money. Here's what I don't love. I don't want to be spending draft picks and money. That's why I bring up, like, on the defensive side of the ball, we're going to talk about it next week. I don't love the idea of giant contracts and a ton of draft capital. I'd give up some draft capital with a workable salary number and a workable cap hit and everything else. But these people who think that you can just let a guy like Cook walk and it's just plug and play because our offensive line's so good, we're going to find another guy who comes in here and just solves all of our problems. You don't understand the growth aspect of football and the development aspect of football. Khalil Shakir, the Air Raid Hour, the guys over there, the guys at the Air Raid Hour tweeted out earlier today. If people had been so ready to give up on Khalil Shakir the same way they give up on Keon Coleman, we wouldn't be sitting here today talking about what a reliable piece of the team he is. Luckily, our front office isn't hyperbolic like our fan base. They're not knee-jerk the way we are. Keon Coleman's going to have time to grow. Well, look at what happened. You gave after not liking James Cook because he fumbled the football too much. He couldn't pass protect. Now look at him. Him and Ty Johnson have gone on to become like a 1-2 punch for this offense, both receiving and rushing. And then you throw in Ray Davis, who is just starting to become an NFL professional. I just look at this and I go, the market's bad. The draft's good. But also, what do you want to be? What do you want to do, Chris? You want to let Ty Johnson go? You want to let James Cook go? You don't want to pay him. So then what are you going to do? You're going to go out and you're going to find a third down back who can catch the way he caught a pass against the Denver Broncos.
Yeah.
The way he caught a pass against the Detroit Lions.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to go find a James Cook who can just churn out 1,000-yard season for a team that hasn't had many of them recently. Like this is what I'm talking about. We as fans have tricked ourselves into believing that, oh, well, you just put another running back in there. Says who? We're fans who've watched teams not have a 1,000-yard rusher for 5, 6, 7 years.
Counterpoint. Where was James Cook and Ty Johnson on the last 2 drives against Kansas City?
I like outside looking in. He's hyperbolic about the fans' opinions. Funny how that works. I'm like Wyatt Earp. My hypocrisy knows no bounds. I'm like Doc Holliday talking to Wyatt Earp. Realistically, I think that at running back, the idea that there's a free agent or a draft pick who could be better than what you currently have with this offensive line is crazy. And I think that the way that the offensive side of the ball sets up for free agency, there's not much better you can do. And so if you're going to spend money, you might as well pay your running back. Now, but what you could do is you could make it a 4-year deal, backload it, throw a void year in there just so you can shuffle the cap hit around. He can make his $15 million a year that he thinks he's worth. And at the same time, we all know that it's a reasonable number you can work around. And at the same time, you get to keep a player. You know, I see spin in the comments. To be fair, Singletary could have gotten 1,000 yards. Everybody could have done something, right? I could have gone to prom with a prettier date. I could have if I had done enough push-ups and, I don't know, maybe
went to the orthodontist.
Yes. I could have gone to prom with a prettier date. There's a lot of could haves and would haves and should haves. But that's not reality. That's not the reality we live in. Guys, we live in a world where we have one of the more talented running backs in football, and he wants to be paid like it. There's a reason that you hear our coaching staff who is out there. Spin goes, I highly doubt that. This is a team with a coaching staff and a GM who understand that they want this guy. They understand. They've been outspoken here at the Combine this week about the value of James Cook.
They don't have the prom in England.
That's God. Thank God for the Revolutionary War. The Revolutionary War gave us the prom. That alone, it was worth it.
Dude, I had a thing for prom. Because I went to a private school, prom was open to everybody. So, yeah.
Losers.
No, well, hey, you're looking at the prom prince.
Oh, no.
Sophomore year, I was voted prom prince. Sophomore and junior year for prom, I went with 2 different Jessicas. I love the name Jessica.
And then you married a Jessica.
And then I married a Jessica.
Does she know about this?
Oh, yeah.
She knows she's Jessica number 3. I'm going to start calling her 3. What's up, 3?
The first 2 didn't even go anywhere.
Doesn't matter. I'm going to start calling her 3. She's not going to understand it.
Well, I have my memory book in storage over there.
Oh, my God.
And there's prom pages with redheaded Jessica and brunette Jessica.
Guys, we're going to do a Patreon show. I'm gonna start a Patreon just so we can do a live reading from Chris's memory book and put it behind a paywall. It's $4 to see what Chris's childhood was like, because holy shit. Either way, I want to go back to this point before I forget where I was. Running backs. Everybody is telling me that it's just plug and play and it's going to be easy and it's going to be simple to find another running back. You find another running back, it'll be great. This will be fine. This will be fine. You have one. You have your hands on one of the better talents in the NFL. You have the money to pay him. You can generate the cap space. I know that feasibly, the Greg Thompsons of the world say that the next time Brandon Beane pays a running back will be the first time. But this might be the first time. Because when you look at the needs elsewhere on the roster, one, if you're going to play a heavy defensive game, like we saw what turning the ball over to an effective rushing attack did for Josh Allen's numbers. It made him the league MVP. So if you're going to try to replicate that success that took you to the AFC Championship game, but do it more effectively, you need that guy. And also, if you want the cap flexibility to go out there and continue chasing the guys on the defensive side of the ball who can close a game like that game against the Chiefs out, you're going to need that guy to take a team-friendly deal. So you as the GM and the coach go out there and you publicly say all the right things. And then behind closed doors, you tell the player, look, we're going to find a way to make this work. Chris, I see you laughing way too much.
Dude, Kyle Washington was a prom king.
Yeah! K-Dog. I love it.
There's no... Binghamton was rough.
As a guy who's gotten drunk in Binghamton, it's a city. That city is wild. Good for you, Kyle. So realistically, if you look at the facets of the market that the Bills might investigate on offense, sure, there's a player or two. I like Demarcus Robinson, if there's any player. And to Spin's credit in the chat, maybe a Darius Slayton. There's not much I would chase. For everybody talking about paying Amari Cooper, I wouldn't do that. There's a lot of things I wouldn't do. I would try to get better. I would bring in a speed threat, whether it's via the draft, it doesn't matter where it comes from. You need speed, but I don't have to pay him a fortune. And I feel like this is something that we as a franchise can massage rather than like, hey, we have to take a sledgehammer to this and break it down and build something new. I look forward to what the fan reaction is going to be, Chris, when you go back after free agency and everybody sees who we signed and everybody Slayton for $13 million a year. Oh, Spin. I would rather pay James Cook $17 million a year than Darius Slayton $13 million a year.
I think you'd rather go have beers with your real dad.
A boy named Sue.
Then pay Slayton $13 million.
It is funny that he messaged me on Facebook and was like, hey, can we meet? I was like, yeah, but we'll have to fight. And I told him, he's like, oh, come on, don't be like that. I was like, no, we're not being like anything. Once upon a time, you put your hands on my mother. He goes, you weren't even born. Exactly. Exactly. I wasn't even born yet. So if and when we meet, I'm going to have to put my hands on you. And then if you can like come out the other side of that, you and me can sit outside with an ice pack and have a beer and we can talk. Until then, this whole conversation is a non-starter. Guess what, Chris? Shocker, I still haven't met the guy. I like how prom stories are starting to break out in the chat. Guys, who here went to prom? Let's talk about this. We already know where I stand in the NFL draft. I've pontificated enough. I want to see this. Spin, where did you go to prom? I know where you live here in upstate New York. And what's funny is...
I think I went to 4 proms. I was a prom king in general, just for how many I went to. I think I went to 4 or 5 proms, for sure.
5 proms? Yeah, because they let losers in of any age. Lauren, the guy I went to prom with passed away this year. There's no evidence that it was because he went with me in 2004, but also no evidence that it wasn't. I like that Lauren Oubre is still in school, eligible to go to prom in 2004. See, I was already in college, and yet I traveled home to North Collins to go to a prom when I was in college, and it was hell. Because I was like, oh man, I'm here at this thing with all these kids who are still in high school. Oh, this is where the cutoff happens.
I influenced our senior prom because my school was so small. I was a part of like the prom committee and the theme to prom, and we did like a rave. So we had a.
You were part of the prom committee?
Yeah, we did a rave style prom. We had glow sticks and everything. I saved a bunch that didn't get broken at prom, and I put them in my 93 Maxima. So when we would like hang out in like senior year, summer of senior year, you just be at a traffic light, put on that techno song from Super Troopers and crack some glow sticks from the center console and just get nuts at a traffic light and then have people look at you and people think you're weird as shit. Yeah, I am weird. I went to 5 proms. Sophomore, junior. I think I went to 2 senior proms and then 1 the year after I graduated.
Roy Collins, I was expelled from school, never made a prom. Hey, listen, there's nothing wrong with not going. I'm not going to lie to you. It's kind of a bunch of bullshit. It's worse than a wedding because nothing good is actually happening to someone you know. Steve Noble, I went to an extra prom and went home with my best friend's date. I'm an absolute piece of shit. Yes, these are the stories. This is what makes prom time great because everyone's garbage at a certain level. We're all terrible. I remember one of my proms ended up with me at a Denny's eating. I'm not proud of this.
This isn't where you got beat up outside of a Denny's.
No, this was in high school. Literally a little bit intoxicated because we were like, hey, guess what'll be funny? We sneak a flask into prom, but it was junior prom. So we're like, hey, junior prom, like we know what we're doing. We know how to drink because we've had, a couple. Do you remember Bacardi Orange? Or no, Bacardi Silver.
Yeah.
We had a couple Bacardi Silvers. We know how to drink. I've had some OV splits in the woods, like a homemade wine that we've stolen from our parents. We're drinkers. So my buddy filled a flask with Cutty Sark, and brought it to junior prom. Fast forward a couple hours, we get dropped off by a limousine at Denny's, and I am two-fisting moons over my hammy. Just two-fisting. I'm bombed. It's a terrible place to be when you're like 17 years old. And then, because the whole time you're like, I'm going to have to go home and face my parents. Good God. I better wolf down another bagel while I'm here. Oh, I'm just looking through the comments. Steve, you're supposed to be a wingman, not a Red Baron. Red Baroning. That's a hilarious. Guys, prom is a magical time in everybody's life. I think it's funny that Lauren, senior ball was at Samuel's Grand Manor. A Friday night field party, always better than prom. That's the fun thing about going to school in North Collins. Every single prom ended up in a field party. You always ended up in the field because that's all there is. It's the best. Now, obviously, Drew Greer wouldn't know anything about that. Drew Greer doesn't know anything about field parties. I read spreadsheets and I do math at the highest levels. Guys, I love you all. I'm happy you show up here to listen to me bloviate about this. I firmly believe that the offensive side of the football is going to be one of those anticlimactic parts of the Bills' free agency foray this season. I firmly believe that. I think they should be spending more time looking inwards rather than out, because you're a team that just made the AFC Championship game and has an opportunity to put the band back together and just run it back with augmentation. Go take care of that. Take care of your business. Take care of your running back. Take care of your offensive line. You mean ruminate. Damn it. That word is going to haunt us forever, and I love it.
Well, we forgot to mention that we're calling all of you, because of Super Mexican, you are all now ruminators.
The Ruminators.
The Ruminators is our fan base.
The Ruminators, because you love to ruminate on things with us. Just a quick note, we will be recording next Thursday instead of Wednesday. Next Thursday instead of Wednesday. To
accommodate Anthony Prohaska, allegedly. Still working out the details on that.
With that said, would Cook really hold out if he doesn't get a deal? I don't think he'll hold out, Spin, but I don't think you put him in that position. I want that guy playing as hard as he possibly can. The T. Higgins situation tells you that if you play chicken with your star players, who you kind of need, you can do it, and maybe they try to go prove themselves, but maybe they don't. Maybe instead every single bump and bruise and the Druminators. Yes, that's so much better. Thank you, Lauren. Every single hammy tweak, every ankle tweak, You have the player going, hey, you know what? I don't feel like pushing myself. And he has every right to do that. If you're not going to give him long-term security, why is he going to jeopardize his body? It's what T. Higgins has been doing to the Bengals for the last 2 seasons. They keep tagging him instead of giving him security, so he's not giving them 100% unless he feels 100%. The games that he plays in, he's a game changer. The games that he doesn't play in, it's because, well, I have a hangnail, and I'm not putting myself in that position because I have to go out to free agency again next year, allegedly. And so with that in mind, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that with James Cook. I want to make James Cook feel good for a short period of time. You don't need to marry the guy long term. It's not your wife. You just need him for the next 2 to 3 years. And if that's what I need and I have to give him a 4-year deal to get there, so be it. Tack a void year on and there we go. Now you've made this work for yourself, both in terms of cap rollout, in terms of the player, the talent, the locker room, the vibes. Because again, you'd be sending the message as a franchise that if you show up here and you develop and you work hard and then you achieve, we will reward you. The Buffalo Bills have done better than most franchises in sending that message. I just think that now they have to make sure they capitalize on it in the right places. Don't do what every asshole fan wants you to do and go chase something at the expense of this running back when you haven't had a running back who's been able to do what James Cook has done in years. He's climbing up the leaderboard in terms of touchdowns and rushing yards and all these things, and people keep going, well, Singletary could have done it. Could have, should have, would have, but didn't. Let's take what we have, right? Because there's wishes, there's hopes, and then there's what you have. Let's take what we have offensively, lock it in for the foreseeable future, and then continue to tack on and add, and maybe you strike lightning somewhere.
Does void year money get counted as dead cap? Roy Collins wanting to know.
For sure. You count those void years as money against your cap. But at the same time, it's okay because you've already accounted for it. And you say, okay, I know for a fact, like you look at it's a point I made to somebody at work today. The Eagles took on $360 million worth of void years to win a Super Bowl. They lead the NFL right now in void year money that's on their books. And no one cares. Chris, does anyone in Philadelphia, are they calling the radio station going, man, I'm really angry we gave all these void years and we have all this future dead money? Is anybody calling Philly sports radio saying that today, Chris?
No.
Absolutely fucking not. So knock it off, guys. It's not your money. Don't worry about it. Also, if you can roll it on into the future, I would take out a second mortgage on my house if you told me that the money I could get for it would bring a Lombardi. Sure. I'll figure it out. You don't think that our GM and coach feel the same way? You don't think that after all these years, they don't feel the same way? They don't care. It's going to be very interesting to see. Hopefully they don't overspend. I want to see savvy moves. I'd love for them to take a dart throw or two in free agency. At wide receiver, but a DeMarcus Robinson. I want some of these lesser known talents that have ceilings. Who those are, go listen to Cover One. They'll tell you all about the X's and O's and what these guys do and presumably do and don't do.
They're actually on right now.
They're on right now.
Leave our show. Everyone leave right now.
Which is why I'm going to end this. I like this. Well, technically it's dead cap, but it doesn't end up being dead cap for the actual void year unless the player gets extended. Bang. And that's it. And that's why I look at Connor McGovern and I go, well, if you extend this guy, then the void year, I mean, it's kind of, we will have to do some work, but we can figure these things out to keep the band together. And in that way, I just want to make sure that the Bills offense that's been the most efficient version of itself stays together with very little outside interference. Last year, they didn't make any big swings. They had to make the biggest move they made all year was a trade for Amari Cooper. This year, you don't have to do it. You could go out there and massage that. You could look at the growth of Coleman, but you don't want to bank on it. But But give it a chance, but don't bank on it. Go out and bring in a competitor. Bring in a guy who can play wide receiver and run routes really well, who can go out there and compliment Shakir. Because then at least you know you have two guys. Two under contract who you know can run routes well, can make something happen for your offense when you need it. And then you figure out the boundary, whether it's a draft, whether it's you have options. Just find it. And it's fun. I love all the debate that's been going on in the chat tonight about it. Remember what happened when T-Bass got his big contract? I know, but
You don't have to remind Drew.
I don't think running backs and James Cook are the same thing. I'm just very interested to see how the Bills choose to attack the offensive side of the ball, because realistically, you hear it from both the GM and coach. The defensive side of the ball is the one that needs the work. I guarantee you that's where you're going to see the onus put. And this draft aligns perfectly for it. The trade market right now aligns perfectly for them to make big swings on the defensive side of the ball. I think you be conservative and you use your cap space to save your offensive players and keep the core together. And you use your draft capital to go out there and try to get other players, whether it's via trade or whether it's in the draft itself. Sorry, but not sorry. That's just how I feel. Guys, would Slayton be worth $13 million if he gets 1,000 yards for the season? Sure. And if Slayton were to show up here and he was the outside boundary threat, opposite Coleman and all these other things, I think that it would be worth the expenditure if he got 1,000. But I don't know how you get 1,000 in an offense where every single player needs the football. I don't think there's any 1,000-yard receivers for the Buffalo Bills in the foreseeable future. And for everybody who says you can't win without one, 9 teams have now won a Super Bowl out of the last 15 without a 1,000-yard wide receiver. So it's doable. Let's be another one of those teams that goes out and does it. This has been fun.
I'll go over to cover one and make fun of Greg's appearance.
No, it's not Greg. Tonight it's the film room, which means it's going to be Eric Turner, probably Anthony Prohaska. Drew, who are the core players in your opinion? The ones that are worth keeping together? Okay. Real quick, before we get out of here, since it got broached, the core players for me, the offensive line as a whole, I want that entire unit from starters to backups. I need them here. I also need a Mac Hollins. I need a Khalil Shakir, who we've already taken care of. Curtis Samuel's stuck here. That was probably a free agency swing and miss, but he's here now, and there's nothing I can do about it. So with that said, I look at Coleman's part of your core, whether you like him or not. I believe that Knox is really our most consistent tight end in terms of what you need a tight end to do in the game of football. Kincaid is a good receiving threat, but he's not a good blocker. He needs to get bigger. He needs to get stronger. He needs to prove that he loves being a tight end in the NFL. Otherwise, he's just he's Mike Gesicki with a little more PR. And I don't want that. I don't want that for him. I want the kid to succeed. I just like the concept that they have these guys who they can go to. James Cook is a part of the core. Ty Johnson is a part of the core. These are the guys who have made the biggest plays for you. You already have a Ray Davis who will be out there and can put up, when everybody else is banged up, a 125-yard game now and again. But realistically, the guy who's going to make the most electric plays for you is James Cook. And it could also be Ty Johnson, your chosen third down back. That's your core. That and Josh Allen. Now get those guys under contract, get the right extensions in the right places, and give yourself the cap flexibility moving forward so that you can go take the swings that you want to on defense. So that your offense that's powered by an MVP caliber quarterback, not so much the ancillary talents around him, can still they can stake you to a lead and they can keep it on the other side of the ball. I don't know. I can't. When I think about, and this kind of sets up next week's show, when I think about the core of the team, I see multiple guys on the offense right now who I would be willing to call the core of this football team. And at the same time, when I look at the defensive side of the ball, Chris, how many guys do you see that you think are like an immediate part of our future? When you look at him and say, that guy has to be a Buffalo Bill.
It might be one or two people, like a Bernard and Benford are probably the top two on defense.
There's not a single safety I would keep long term. Cole Bishop is still finding his way. He's a rookie, so I'm not going to. The jury's still out on him. Rasul Douglas, I don't know that I need him back. In fact, I saw too much of the back of his jersey this year. I look at the defense and I say, Greg Rousseau, I like the idea of Greg Rousseau. But at the same time, if they let him walk, it's not like Bruce Smith's leaving town. Right? If Ed Oliver were to be cut next year for cap considerations, you'd go, he kind of underperformed at times. DeQuan Jones leaves the team and everyone will go, well, he had a good year or two. Von Miller gets cut this offseason. How many people are shedding a tear?
Only women.
I hate you. There is there's no core on defense. It's gone. Either it's gone or it's aging rapidly. And they have to find answers on that side of the ball. And they also have to find better execution. So there's a wholesale change coming. Again, you use your draft capital for the future to find your core before you have to pay them. Once you have a core, you just pay them so you can keep them around. And that's how you work the salary cap. I love it. I love everything about it. I love what this team has the opportunity to do this offseason and the message that it's going to send about what the future of the Buffalo Bills is. But we are like a half hour over our runtime, and we got to get the hell out of here. I'm Drew Gear. That's Chris Kruger. And this has been your Rock Pile Report.